Hello, everyone. As you are getting on, we're going to give a few, just give everyone a few more seconds to get on, to get time to get a good amount, and then we'll go ahead and get started. We're excited to have you tonight. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So good evening, everyone, and thank you all so very much for joining us tonight. I know it's around dinner time, so we appreciate you taking the time out to be with us tonight. So my name is Ernika Webster, and I am one of the associate directors here at Washington College. And I'm actually the only, I shouldn't say one. I am the incoming and prospective students financial aid counselor. So if you're a senior and you're starting the process with us, most likely I'll be the one that you'll be contacting. Along with me tonight is my director, Jennifer Gallagher, who actually will be presenting for us tonight. So Jennifer will go over a PowerPoint to talk a lot about financial aid. And after she does her PowerPoint, we have a Q&A session at the end. So we know when it comes to financial aid, a lot of times it's one of those sticky, scary, topics that you really don't want to talk about because you heard all this information about how terrible it is. Guess what? We're going to try to make it a little easy for you tonight. So we're going to go over the basic information about financial aid, and hopefully by the end of tonight, we'll be able to help you through the process a little better. During the presentation, please don't hesitate to go ahead and put your questions down in the Q&A box. So as you think of them, go ahead and put your questions out there. And like I said, at the end, I'll go ahead and go through the questions with everyone. So without further ado, I will turn it over to my director, Jennifer.
Thank you, Ernika, and thank you for everyone for joining us tonight. We're happy that you're taking this time to be with us. I am going to go ahead and shut my video off, and I'll go ahead and share the presentation. That way it'll make more room and you'll be able to see the presentation better. As Ernika said, as we go along, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. We may answer some of those questions as we go through the presentation. If not, we'll definitely have time at the end to answer your questions. Okay, as Ernika said, my name is Jennifer Gallagher, and this is our contact information for the financial aid office. It is on our website. We're easily accessible. So after this presentation, if you have follow-up questions, you're welcome to reach out to us at either the phone number listed there or our main financial aid email. For this presentation, we are going to go over the different types of financial aid, federal, institutional, namely academic merit scholarships, need-based grants, and other institutional grants and scholarships, along with state grants, external aid, and then we have an other category as well. The first topic that we're going to discuss is the FAFSA. And my understanding is that on this call tonight, we have several students that are high school seniors. So as we have noted here, the FAFSA for next fall for you high school seniors is available now. It became available on October 1st. We do have the website listed there, but you can just go to studentaid.gov to access the FAFSA. Make sure you don't go to FAFSA.com. They will charge you. You want to go to studentaid.gov. There's a couple things that we will refer to throughout the presentation, and I wanted to make you aware of them and kind of define them for you so you understand what they are. The first is the Federal Student Aid, or FSA ID. This is a username and password that is required by both the student and the parent of a dependent student, and it is your ID to sign the FAFSA electronically. It is also your login to the FAFSA. So you want to make sure that each of you has your own separate FSA ID. And one little thing to keep in mind is that if a parent, which they often do, is signing up for an FSA ID for themselves and the student, make sure you're using separate emails. Don't use the same email, and also don't use a high school email for the student. The reason for that is after the student graduates high school, that email will go away. They won't have access to it anymore. So any communication sent to the student from Federal Student Aid will not be received. Another acronym that we use, the SAR, is referred to as the Student Aid Report. This is the basic information that you put on your FAFSA, and it will also display the results of your FAFSA, which is known as the Expected Family Contribution, or EFC. The SAR is produced about 3 to 5 days after you complete your FAFSA and will be available for download in a PDF format. The Student Aid Report, like I said, is a compilation of all of the information that you submitted on your FAFSA, but the first page up at the top in the right-hand corner is where the EFC will be displayed. This EFC is an important number for the institution, and they do use it to determine types of aid as specifically need-based aid, and we'll get into that a little bit further as we go along. We have a FAFSA checklist here. So if you have not started your FAFSA yet and you're a high school senior, you will want to gather all of this information, or as much of it as you can, before you begin to complete your FAFSA. As I mentioned, the FSA ID already, you will also need to have yours and your parents' social security number or an alien registration number. Driver's license is not required. It is an optional field, but if you have that handy, you could enter that information. Your and your parents' federal income tax and W-2 information for 2020. If there is also an option to use the IRS data retrieval tool, which is the preferred way to enter the taxes into the FAFSA, but if that isn't possible, sometimes there are complications with that, or there are certain household circumstances that don't allow for the data retrieval. You will have to hand enter all of the information, so you'll want to have that handy. You'll also want bank statement information, because the FAFSA does ask for cash, savings, investment information. And then any other records of money earned, investments, or untaxed income. Examples of untaxed income could be child support received, but they do list them specifically on that page, so you'll want to have records of that handy as well. I thought that this page would be a way to maybe knock out some questions that you all may have in advance. These are frequent questions that our office gets when students start to begin to complete the FAFSA. And I'm just going to go through each one of these fairly briefly, but certainly can expand later on should there be more questions. The first one, can my parent and I share the same FSA ID? I briefly touched on this before. No, you cannot. The FSA ID is your electronic signature for the FAFSA. You each need to have your own separate FSA ID with your own email. Can my parent use my FSA ID? The FSA ID should not be shared. However, if you are not together when you're completing the FAFSA, the person that starts the FAFSA will be asked to create a save key. This is a 4-digit number of their choice. When they are done with their part, they can give that 4-digit save key to the other person, and that person will use that save key to log in, and they will be able to complete the remaining parts of the FAFSA. The next, I'm sorry, I lost my spot here. The next question, what if my parent does not have a social security number? If your parent doesn't have an SSN, they will not be able to sign up for an FSA ID. However, you can still complete the FAFSA. When it comes time to enter the social security number of the parent on the FAFSA, you will enter all zeros. 000000000. And what that will do is at the end, when it comes time to signing electronically, it will prompt you to print off a signature page. You will then sign that signature page and mail it to Federal Student Aid. They do say it takes longer. Well, it does. 10 to 12 weeks is what they advertise, but in my experience, it has never taken that long, usually 2 to 3 weeks processing time. What if my parents have more than one child in college at the same time? There is a handy tool when you're doing the FAFSA that will allow a parent to link information from one student to the other to complete the FAFSA easier instead of having to go back and redoing the same thing all over again. The link will come on the confirmation page when you're signing the FAFSA for the first child. It is only at that time that that link will appear. If you don't take advantage of it at that time, you will not be able to access that link again, and you will have to complete the FAFSA for the second child from the beginning. What if my parent was recently married? For reporting purposes, a parent means your legal, which is biological or adoptive parent or step parent, or a person that the state has determined to be your legal parent. So if your parents are divorced or separated, to determine which parent to use on the FAFSA, you have to ask yourself which parent you lived with more over the past 12 months. If you spent equal time with your parents, then you will choose the parent that provided the most financial support to you over the past 12 months. If your parent was recently married, oh, I'm sorry, that was which parent do I put on the FAFSA? I skipped that question. So that was the answer to that question. The next question, what if my parent was recently married? If at the time you fill out the FAFSA, your parent was married, they must include the step parent on the FAFSA. If your parent was married in 2021, for example, they will not be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool. It's one of those situations that I mentioned earlier that you would not be eligible to use the data retrieval tool. So they will have to manually combine their individual tax returns and enter them on the FAFSA by hand. This is because they most likely each filed either as head of household or single in for the tax year for 2020. So that does need to be combined, and both parent and step parent would need to be on the FAFSA. What if my or my parents' financial status has changed? And this is very prevalent right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic. You definitely need to contact your college financial aid office. You will complete the FAFSA with the tax information from 2020 as is, but if your current financial situation is not what it was in 2020, you can reach out to the college financial aid office to talk about a possible adjustment to the aid, to the components that were entered on the FAFSA. The college office will collect documentation from you depending on the situation, and they can make a professional judgment and send those updates to Federal Student Aid and let them know we've made an adjustment based on this loss of income. But certainly contact the college financial aid office. And lastly, what can I expect to hear from when can I expect to hear from my colleges about my financial aid package? Every college is different. While the FAFSA is available now, and some of you may have already done it and it's already processed, many financial aid offices are not, their systems are not prepared to upload all of that data yet. So it just depends on each college. But here at Washington College, our goal is to begin offering letters mid-November. So that is our goal again this year, and we are working steady toward that goal. So if you have already or are looking to apply to Washington College, hope to hear from us around mid-November. Okay, I just want to go over some different types of federal aid that you may have heard about or you may not have heard about. The first one is the Pell Grant. When you do your FAFSA and you are notified of the student aid report being available, you will also see information about certain types of aid that you could be eligible for. And one of those could be a federal Pell Grant, depending on what the EFC of your FAFSA was. For this current year, the FAFSA will allow for an EFC up to 5846, which means Pell Grant can go at a prorated, is awarded at a prorated amount up to an EFC of 5846. There's also another federal grant that is given to colleges that is a very limited fund. Every college gets a different amount, but it is to be awarded to the institution's neediest students. So those students that have a 0 EFC would be defined as the neediest students. And this award is generally awarded on a first come, first served basis. So the earlier you get your FAFSA done, the better chance you have of receiving some of this grant. And federal work study. It is a need-based award given to students with financial need. So it is not an award that brings down the balance. It doesn't help pay your bill. It is a federal dollar amount that assists the institution in helping students get jobs. It is how we pay the paycheck, essentially. So we have several jobs on campus that are federal work study. We also have several jobs that are not federal work study. You don't have to have federal work study to be able to get a job on campus. It just helps the department that has you employed to pay you your paycheck. And the last is direct loans. And as a freshman, federal student aid limits the amount that a freshman can get per year to $5,500. It can be a combination of subsidized and or unsubsidized. It depends on the results of the FAFSA or the EFC. A lower EFC will generally allow for subsidized loan. The maximum that we can give there is $3,500. And you can see that the current fixed interest rate is 3.73%. And one good thing about this loan is that the government will pay the interest as it accrues until you either stop attending at least half time or graduate. At that time, the interest that will begin accruing will be your responsibility. The unsubsidized loan, on the other hand, the government does not pay the interest. So you will be responsible for that accrual as soon as the loan disperses. They both have the same interest rate. They're both fixed. And they are both, if you have to take a loan, they are both the best loans that you can take without having to borrow the other options, Parent Plus loan or private loans. In order to receive both of those loans, there are two, actually there's a third that we don't have added here that will come into play in 2022. There's a master promissory note, which is your promise to pay. You'll have to complete entrance loan counseling. It's about a 30-minute session that'll explain your rights and responsibilities of borrowing federal aid, help you understand payments, how much your payment might be. And then there is an annual student loan acknowledgement. And what that is going to be is letting you understand how much loan you've borrowed at the time you're doing the acknowledgement, so that you understand what your debt is going forward before you decide to take out additional loans. That will be an annual requirement starting in fall of 2022. Okay, merit-based scholarships. These awards are determined by the Office of Admissions, and they use a variety of different things to determine those awards, such as GPA, test scores, class rank. They are pretty much a holistic review, so it may be other things that they use to determine those award amounts. These scholarships are not based on financial need. So there is no need to have to do a FAFSA to receive these awards. It is strictly based on information they receive through the application process. Award amounts are currently up to $35,000. And in order to renew these scholarships, students must maintain a minimum GPA as noted on their merit scholarship letter. Generally speaking, that is a 2.5 cumulative Washington College GPA at the end of every spring. Need-based financial aid. So need-based financial aid comes into play when you do your FAFSA. What we look at is the cost of attendance, which is only the direct costs. And these are those that are billed by the institution. So tuition and fees. And if you're on campus, that will also include room and your meal plan. We take those costs and we subtract the EFC from your FAFSA, and that tells us how much need you have. And then from there, we determine what types of federal aid you're eligible for. And those listed there are the need-based federal options that we have. And then we look at institutional need-based aid. We also use the FAFSA to determine how much need-based, institutional need-based aid that we can offer. And that is a stacked award that goes on top of the merit scholarship, on top of all of the federal Pell Grant and other gift aid that is on top of that as well. Okay, other institutional grants and scholarships. So oftentimes colleges offer grants or scholarships that are in addition to the merit or need-based aid that was offered. They can be for a variety of things, such as those listed here. You may be required to write an essay, for example, or provide documentation for such things as community service. But you should reach out to each college to inquire about some of the additional opportunities they may have available specific to that institution. Okay, now we're going to talk about Maryland grants. So this will apply to those of you on the call that are Maryland residents. If you are a resident of Maryland, there are several grants available that you may qualify for. The ones that we have listed here are just a few of them. We really want to stress the importance, and we have them listed here, of the deadlines. Maryland Higher Education Commission is not flexible at all. Their deadlines are very strict. So you can see here, if you want to be considered, you must file a FAFSA by March 1st. You also must list at least one Maryland school on your FAFSA for them to consider you for grants. Maryland automatically uploads all FAFSAs that are done for all Maryland residents that put a Maryland school on their FAFSA. So you won't have to contact them. They will have access to your FAFSA. March 1st is the deadline for that. If there are outstanding documents requested by them, the deadline to submit those is April 1st. And then they will make notifications to both schools and students by May 1st each year. The big grant they have is the Maryland Guaranteed Access Grant. And for this current academic year, the amount here at Washington College was valued at $19,400. That is in addition to your merit scholarship that could be offered by us, as well as any federal grants that you might receive. There's also an educational assistance grant that is $3,000, as well as senatorial and delegate scholarships. And those amounts vary. You must reach out to the senators and delegates, and they offer what they have available, and the amounts, like I say, they vary. We've seen $300, and we've seen some $1,000 to $2,000. The Maryland Guaranteed Access Grant is one that you have to qualify for income-wise, income-based. Actually, the EA grant is the same, but it is a little more flexible. The chart that includes the household income is actually on the MHEC website. So you can go out there and visit and see if you think that you might qualify for either one of those. External scholarships. This is where it can really make a difference as to how much you end up having to pay at the when the final bill comes out in July. There are organizations that award scholarships for all different types of reasons, and the time to start researching those is now, especially if you're a high school senior. Look at local places that maybe you didn't think of before, such as your parents' insurance agent, your parents' bank, or your bank, your employer, if you're employed as a student, or your parents' employer. I mean, there's so many different opportunities out there that are available that just go unawarded because people don't do the research. Sometimes they do require an essay, but oftentimes you can send that same essay to multiple scholarship organizations, and you don't have to repeat the work over and over and over. We had a student come in this fall with 14 outside scholarships. That is the most that I have ever seen, but wow, did that help that student meet their goal in paying their bill in the fall. A couple places you can look for scholarships. I did mention workplaces, businesses in your town, but your high school guidance office should be your first resource. They are a collection point for all of the scholarships that may be specific to your school. And so definitely reach out to your high school guidance office to see what they have available. Also, like Lions Club, Rotary clubs, local service organizations. I know here in Chestertown, the local Lions Club offers scholarships every year to high school seniors. So you may have a Lions Club in your town that can do the same thing. And then there's also search engines. You may have heard of them, like fastweb.com or scholarships.com. These are a little more difficult because you are competing nationally with students for the same scholarship. But what I could suggest here is that when you enter in information, when you first go on these sites, you enter in information about yourself, your likes, your interests, your demographics, and they will alert you when a scholarship comes up that you meet the criteria for. So the more things that you can put in about yourself, the more unique you make yourself. And And so there may be scholarships available to you that might not be to other students. And lastly, we're going to talk about other sources of aid. So if you have exhausted all of the options that I've previously talked about, and you still have a shortfall, there's a couple options available for you. One of those is a Federal Direct Plus loan. This is a loan for parents who want to borrow on behalf of their student up to and including the cost of attendance. So if, say, for example, the balance left on the account is $1,000, you can borrow a loan for $1,000 and you can borrow a little bit more. The additional amount could be for other educational expenses such as transportation or books or other miscellaneous fees that the student may have that you are not able to come out of pocket for. This is a federal loan. It does go through federal student aid. It is a fixed interest rate, just like the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. The interest rate is a little bit higher. I believe it's 6.8% for this year. But it, all in all, is a good loan to have if parents are willing to have that in their name. Another option is an alternative or private education loan. These are what I would say is a last resort loan. They are not the best option, but they are certainly an option to fill the shortfall. They're available to students, and so these would be in the students' names. Parents can actually get those as well, although we don't see that very often. If you can get approved for a private loan as a parent, you should definitely get approved for a Parent Plus loan, and you're probably going to see better interest rates if you do the Plus loan. But what we see mostly is these loans come in the name of the student, and they are most likely going to need a cosigner. So parents may end up being on the hook for that as well. It doesn't have to be a parent, though. It could be anybody that is willing to cosign that has decent credit. These are not federal student loans, and they do offer a variety of options. When you're looking to apply for one of these, you'll want to pick the option that you think is best for you, but they have rates that might be variable, but they also have fixed rates as well. So definitely do your research, and if you think that this may be an option that you're going to seek. And then lastly, Washington College offers 2 different payment plans each semester. We will divide your remaining balance into either 4 or 5 payments per semester, depending on which plan you choose. One nice thing about our financial aid offer letters that we send out each year is we will break down what the payment will be depending on which plan you choose, based on the aid that you've been offered. We will also provide an option for a payment plan that doesn't include loans, so that you can see what your payments would be if you opted out of taking those direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Okay, and a few closing tips. Really, really important. Number 1, stay organized your senior year. For those of you that are seniors, you are going to get information being sent to you in every direction, and it is going to be difficult to keep track of who's who and who is requesting information. And it is really, really important to keep organized. Maybe keep a folder for each college that you've applied to, and keep everything that you receive from that school in that folder. And when you receive a request for information, try to do it right away so that you don't miss any deadlines. Again, the deadlines, keep a list of all of the institutional and state deadlines and maintain reminders on your devices. That does come into play, especially if you have not decided, and most of you probably haven't, what school you want to go to. When you complete the FAFSA, you can put up to 10 schools, and then you can go back to the FAFSA and you can omit some of those schools and add more. So as you can see, you're going to have a lot of information coming your way. So find a way to stay organized. Start applying for every scholarship that you are eligible for, and start now, as I mentioned before. Your FSA ID is really important. It's your electronic signature. It's attached to your social security number. So make sure you keep your login information for that in a safe place. And don't fall prey to scams. I mentioned at the beginning, don't go to FAFSA.com. You should never pay a fee for the FAFSA. The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So it is free. Financial aid offices are also here to help. So if you begin doing the FAFSA and you are just stumped, you don't know how to answer a question, please reach out to us and we can certainly help you through that. Okay, that completes the presentation. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. Okay, so I think we are going to start on the Q&A. I'm going to have Arnika look at those and she will work her way through those and we'll start answering your questions.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, so very much for that great presentation. Of course, I'm going to say that because I'm your colleague, but also I think it was great information and we hope you all feel the same way. Go ahead and get to the Q&A section. So the first question up, and I'll either answer or I'll defer to Jennifer. So the first question is Washington College need blind or need aware? First time I've gotten asked that question, but let me explain the definition for those of you who may not understand. So need blind admission simply means that the applicant's ability to pay for their education will not be the determining factor for admission decision. And that is us at Washington College. We do not look at that. Our admissions department does not look at your ability to pay to determine if you will be admitted. Now, need aware is the opposite. It's just pretty much saying that admissions, they look at the student's financial need to determine if they will admit them. Okay, so yes. So, and I think Jennifer said that in the beginning of her slides, you can be admitted here at Washington College and get a merit scholarship and not have to do the FAFSA. Okay. So question 2, what is it meant by prorated for the Pell Grant and then over what period of time? Jennifer, can you answer that one? Okay, thank you.
The proration comes into play based on the EFC. So a 0 EFC will get the maximum amount of Pell Grant. As the EFC goes up, the Pell Grant goes down. Up to, I think I put in the 5,800 or so EFC, you will get a small amount of Pell Grant. So maybe a couple $100. But that's what the proration is, and it's per year. So the maximum amount, Arnika, is 65.40.
It was 64.46. Oh, I've only done this all year long.
Yeah. 64.95 for the year is the maximum amount that a 0 EFC student would be eligible for, and half goes in the fall and half goes in the spring. But as the EFC goes up, then that amount will go down. If your EFC is over that threshold, then you wouldn't be eligible for any Pell Grant at all. Now, keep in mind, the Pell Grant amount can and most likely will change every year because you have to complete that FAFSA every year, and it is based on a different year's tax return. So it could vary from year to year.
Thank you for that. Okay, so our next question, I am actually going to defer to one of my other colleagues, Anne Marie, who is in the background for us from our admissions department. So the question is, do you or would you look at the CSS profile? So Anne Marie, if you can explain that for our guests.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Marie Magnus, and I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Admissions here. And I can tell you that we actually do not look at the CSS profile. The CSS profile is one of those it's almost like a FAFSA, but it's like a FAFSA plus or an additional part of the FAFSA or a FAFSA type situation, for lack of a better term, where essentially you're filling out some additional information. Some schools will take that into consideration when it comes to the admissions decision. Because we are need blind, actually Washington College does not, I don't even have access to not only your FAFSA, but we don't use the CSS profile, and I wouldn't see it or I wouldn't consider it.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions? Let's see. I think that's it. So that means, Jennifer, I think you've done a good job. I'm hoping that without having more questions in the Q&A, that we were able to answer most of your questions that you have. Again, like Jennifer said at the beginning, don't hesitate to reach out to our office if you have additional questions, or if you have, a specific question for your circumstance that you did not want to ask online, please don't hesitate to reach out via email or give our office a call, and we'll be happy to speak with you.
Arnika, I think we have,
Have another one come in?
yeah.
Okay. All right. 1 second.
Will students who applied
Oh.
early decision hear sooner than mid-November?
I did not see that. Hold on. Okay, could you repeat is that the question? Could you repeat when Washington College will send out the financial aid package for fall 22 admissions? That's the one I saw. So for us in financial aid, we will send out a financial aid package, hopefully November, December. That's usually when we start. So usually if you're applying for early decision, we try to get the financial aid packet out when you get your early decision packet, but don't hold us hostage on that answer. So if we can get up and running for the new year packaging, we'll go ahead and get the packages out as soon as possible. And was there another one, Jennifer?
Yeah, there's another question that talks about financial situation, if it's changed since 2020, or there are issues that should be taken into account, that we should contact the financial aid office and they can adjust the FAFSA. Is the adjustment just for that school, and should students apply to multiple colleges, so are multiple schools adjusting the FAFSA? I can answer that one.
Okay.
Every school should be taking these situations into consideration. One aspect of the American Rescue Plan for the third round of federal funds that we received due to COVID-19 required all institutions to reach out to their current students if they were having a loss of income in their household. So you should be able to contact every financial aid office to inquire about what they can do to assist you. Now, with that, every college process is going to be different. I can give you a little more information about how Washington College would look at that. If you are somebody who has a recent loss of income, we will want to wait a little while to see if that loss of income continues. It just really depends on the situation, but the conversation really needs to be had with each college financial aid office, and they will direct you and help you, guide you, I guess, collect the information they'll need to make those adjustments.
Thank you for that explanation. So we do have a couple more questions that came in for Anne Marie over in our admissions department. So Anne Marie, the question is, will students who apply early decision hear sooner than mid-November?
So students who've applied early decision to Washington College will hear back from us at the latest for on the admissions decision for December 15th. So you can kind of keep that in the back of your head of like, this is the latest I'll hear. The earlier that you apply to Washington College, actually, the earlier you will hear back from us. So we kind of try to set, we know that waiting is the worst and no one likes the waiting. It's the worst part of the college process, right? But so we try to get you those decisions as quickly as possible. And the earlier you apply, the earlier you'll hear back from us with that kind of cap off date to answer your question of December 15th.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question. Do parents include 529 college accounts in the value of investments? We get that question a lot. Yes, so if the 529 plan is either in the student's name or the parent's name, they have to include the full amount as the investments on the FAFSA. And when you're doing the FAFSA, one handy thing about the FAFSA, it has a helpful hint box on the, I think it was the left-hand side, that when you get to that question, it explains to you what the question is about and where you need to get that information from. Okay. Okay, I did answer that question about the packet. Okay, I'm just going through, making sure I didn't miss any other ones. Okay, so last call for questions. We do have a few more because I was, wasn't trying to get out early, but I didn't see any more questions come in, but I don't want to cut anyone off. So last call for questions. See, we getting in there.
Okay, I think we can wrap it up. I know that we are a little bit early, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are available every day. So if you're like me, you'll get off this call and you'll think of 5 things that you wanted to ask. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. Arnika is an excellent resource for you and can help guide you through this process, can help fill out the FAFSA. Any questions that you may have, we're here to help you. And we're so happy that you joined us tonight. And Arnika, do you want to?
I think that's it. So I look forward, hopefully, to now that we're in person, maybe meet some of you all when you come to campus to visit. If you come to campus to visit and need to set up an appointment to speak with me in person, you can do that through your admissions visit request. So again, like Jennifer said, don't hesitate. That's what we're here for. So thank you again, everyone, for taking the time out tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.